Disaster rehabilitation and recovery is one of the four thematic areas of the disaster risk reduction and management system. It entails the restoration, reconstruction, and implementation of development measures that will enable affected localities and communities to return to normalcy and build resiliency from the impact of future disasters. The National Economic and Development Authority is the government's socio-economic development planning and policy coordinating body. It is a member of the National Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council and the Regional Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Councils as provided for in the Republic Act 10121 or the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010. Under this law, NEDA is the designated Vice Chair for Disaster Rehabilitation and Recovery of the National and Regional DRRM Councils. NEDA developed this Rehabilitation and Recovery Planning Guide to provide guidance in the crafting of government pre- and post-disaster recovery procedures at the national and local levels. It is for this reason that NEDA initiated the formulation of this Rehabilitation and Recovery Planning Guide, which benefited from inputs from the World Bank. Recovery decision makers, planners, and implementers face an immense task in assessing, strategizing, and delivering services to affected communities. Resources have to be prepared so they can be effectively tapped when the need arises. Hence, pre-disaster recovery planning should be conducted by national, regional, and local disaster risk reduction and management councils. At the minimum, pre-disaster recovery activities should include the preparation of science-based scenarios, risk assessments, baseline information, recovery strategies, and sources of financing recovery, capacity building for local recovery leadership, project management for long-term recovery, and policy formulation may also be done. The general framework for post-disaster rehabilitation and recovery seeks to align sectoral or thematic outcomes with medium-term outcomes for DRRM and the country's long-term goal of having safe, adaptive, and disaster-resilient Filipino communities. It also provides the basis for designing the monitoring framework for the rehabilitation and recovery program, particularly on how program and project outputs contribute towards the attainment of the goal of building back better and fully restoring economic and social conditions in disaster-affected areas. The Cagayan Valley Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Council Rehabilitation and Recovery Cluster led the formulation of three documents, namely, first is the 2019 Flooding Rehabilitation and Recovery Plan. This document captures the rehabilitation and recovery interventions for the provinces of Cagayan and Isabela, which experienced rains and massive flooding in November 2019. Second is the Cagayan Valley Flood Mitigation and Rehabilitation Program. This document presents the various structural and non-structural measures to mitigate the magnitude of flooding and its impact in the region, and to sustainably manage the resources in the Cagayan River Basin. This is to address flooding brought by Typhoon Ulysses, which was unprecedented in terms of depth and damage that it brought to the various sectors. The third document is the Rehabilitation and Recovery Plans of recent disasters. These include the flooding in Cagayan and Isabela in 2019, Typhoon Ulysses in 2020, and the recent Typhoon Kiko in 2021. These are complementary to the foregoing plan documents, which incorporates strategies, programs, and projects to restore economic conditions of communities affected by the massive flooding and weather disturbances. Taking off from the foregoing planning instruments, the region was able to generate funding commitments for programs and projects that are high impact and built to last, proposed under the NDRRMC Fund, and concerned regional line agencies and local government units. On this note, we commend the efforts of the Office of Civil Defense Regional Office 2 for providing logistic support to the rehabilitation and recovery efforts of the region in times of disaster. Foremost are the PDNA activities. Without it, the preparation of these plans would not have been possible. We also extend our gratitude to the government agencies for the assistance in gathering baseline data and situation reports that we use to complete the PDNA reports and other documents. Likewise, we extend our gratitude to the officers and staff of OCD Region 2 who provided initial report through the conduct of the rapid damage assessment and needs analysis, making the PDNA tasks more coordinated and organized. Deep appreciation is also extended to the countless officers and staff of the local government units who had been the source of critical data and information for the validation of damage report and the subsequent preparation of the PDNA report and this plan. Special mention is accorded to the subsector leads, the Department of Agriculture for the productive sector, the Department of Public Works and Highways for the infrastructure sector, the Department of Social Welfare and Development for the social sector, the Department of the Interior and Local Government for the cross-sectoral sector, and the National Economic and Development Authority for the macroeconomic sector. And most especially, we are grateful to the Almighty for giving us the chance to take part in National Disaster Resilience Month.